Good evening. I'm Joe Carbonetta, and from the Pasadena Media Center, this is Arroyo Live. This program is produced by Pasadena Media to help enrich the community through informative and meaningful conversation. As always, you can share your comments with us anytime at Arroyo Live at pasadenamedia.org. The beginning of each new year brings with it two virtual certainties: the Rose Parade and the Rose Bowl game. Both of these iconic events began and continue in Pasadena, California. Ideas originally conceived by Pasadena's Valley Hunt Club to promote its West Coast paradise, the parade was the centerpiece of a festival with many events, including a West Coast versus Midwest football game. The festival grew quickly, becoming such a success that the Tournament of Roses Association was formed to take charge, as the Valley Hunt Club soon found itself overwhelmed. More than a century has passed since that first midwinter festival, and what began as a warm and sunny West Coast wink toward an East Coast cold and socked in by snow has evolved to become a cultural icon recognized the world over. On this edition, I'll talk with two top officials charged with overseeing the year long preparations that go into each and every New Year's celebration. Please join me for Arroyo Live. Joining me now are Tournament of Roses Parade President Amy Wainscott and Rose Bowl Stadium General Manager Jens Weiden. I'm going to take this opportunity to have each of you tell our viewers at home a little bit more about yourselves. And Jens, since you're at the top of my screen, you get the honor of going first.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe, for having me. It's an honor to be here with you and Amy. So as you mentioned, Jens Weiden, I'm the general manager of the Rose Bowl Stadium. I've actually been with the Rose Bowl Operating Company for close to 10 years. Before I was here, I was actually up in the Bay Area, worked for, I'm going to get some booze here. They hated San Francisco Giants for a while and went to school up there as well. But very excited to be on. Recently named as general manager of the Rose Bowl Stadium. Before this, I was the chief revenue officer here at the stadium. But as of July 1st, took on this great team and a lot of great partners, including the Tournament of Roses and Navy's team that does one of the best spectacles in the country on January 1st here in Pasadena, or this year, I guess January 2nd, Amy. So very excited to be on. Thank you.
Happy to be here. Great to be talking with you. Amy Wainscott. I am the president of the Pasadena Tournament of Roses for the 2023 Rose Parade and the Rose Bowl game. I am a 30-year volunteer with the Tournament of Roses. My first parade was 1993. I am one of 935 volunteers that put on the parade and the game every year. And I have the honor of being a president. It's a 1 year term. And so I get to lead the volunteers and our professional staff beginning in January of 2022 and then finishing up through the parade. So I'm super happy to be here. And like Jen said, this year is a little different because we never have a parade on Sunday. And since January 1st falls on Sunday, we have our parade and game on the 2nd.
Well, thank you as well, Amy, for joining us this evening. I know you both have very, very busy schedules. I'm sure it takes quite a bit of time and effort to get each of these events to go every year. Um, and I want to talk about the upcoming parade and the game, but I thought I'd put you both on the spot for a second. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the history behind the Rose Bowl and the Rose Parade. I was doing a little bit of research myself prior to the show beginning, and it goes back more than a century, and it actually began, if I read this correctly, as more of a promotional idea to get people to come west. Is that true?
It's an interesting story in the late 1800s when the railroad was completed from the East Coast to the West Coast, and many of the families were moving out to California. They wanted to basically show off how beautiful our weather was here, our palm trees, our citrus trees, our roses, and so the Valley Hunt Club in 1897, I believe, Not sure if that's the right day or not, but they decided to have a festival and they named it the Tournament of Roses. It was sort of based off of a festival in Nice, France that one of them had viewed. And it was basically to try and encourage more people to come out to Pasadena. So they started with a small festival, a parade of carriages that were decorated with roses and flowers. And then it was so popular, it just got too big for them to handle. And so they formed the Tournament of Roses Association. And here we are 134 years later.
It's certainly a storied history. As a matter of fact, again, doing a little bit of research, I was surprised to discover that at the very first festival, before it officially became known as the Tournament of Roses Parade, there was actually a football game. And I guess that is the origin for the Rose Bowl game that we know today. But the first game apparently was so one sided that it was replaced in subsequent years with things like chariot races. Is that in fact the case also?
The first Tournament of Roses football game was in 1902 at Tournament Park, and that was before the bowl was built. As Jens will, I'm sure, tell us about the construction of the Rose Bowl Stadium. But it was completely lopsided. I think it was Michigan against Cal. I'm not 100%
Michigan,
sure.
Stanford.
Michigan
I
Stanford.
believe it was
Okay,
45 nothing is the score you're trying to, or 48 nothing is, and
there
they
you
called the
go.
game in the fourth quarter.
The game didn't actually run out the clock. It was so one sided. There was a mercy ending to it.
The
Yes.
original mercy rule.
Oh, wow, that must have been painful.
So they did things like tug of war and chariot races. I think there was even an ostrich race. So I mean, they really they did a lot of homework to see what was actually going to stick, and then of course we came back to the granddaddy of them all. So
Any chance we'll ever see the Roman chariot races return to the Rose Parade festivities?
well, I'm not going to say no. I'm going to tell you no, not this year. But no, we probably won't be seeing that in the near future.
Uh,
Amy, I think too many of your 900 members are lawyers to allow that to ever happen again. The liability would be too great nowadays.
I could see that. So since Amy mentioned that, Jens, would you take a moment to give us just a little bit of the history of the construction of the Rose Bowl? Because I know there's a bit of a story behind that too. It didn't actually get completed the way we see it today all at once.
The story of the stadium is a neat one, and the Tournament of Roses in the city of Pasadena are very much ingrained in that. It's actually interesting. Our 100th birthday of the stadium is actually on Friday. So in a few days from now is the 100th birthday. So as you talk about birthdays, the parade is over 130 years old. We had the 100th Rose Bowl game earlier in the 2000s, and now this is the 100th game or the 100th year of the stadium itself. But the stadium itself was really the vision of the Tournament of Roses in the city of Pasadena, and they brought in Myron Hunt, who was the architect for the stadium. And it was originally built as a horseshoe, and it wasn't totally filled in to be a bowl shape until a few years later when the demand sort of grew. It's a supply and demand type of story, as Amy mentioned. That original game was in a park, and then it outgrew the wooden bleachers, and they came to the Arroyo Seco, which at the time was an open parkland area, and they looked out over the Arroyo from where Chandler School is now, and they said, "How about if we put it right there?" And that's where they put it. And now, 100 years later, this is still a place where that game and other world-class events still take place to this date.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that the Rose Bowl began as more of a horseshoe and eventually became the bowl that we know today. That seems to be a recurrent theme in the city of Pasadena, as City Hall was never completed when it was originally constructed and more or less had a U shape to it for many, many years before the final. Um, it really isn't a complete wall, but what was placed there to round out the building to make it more structurally sound was added later on.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably a great example of it was a community effort. It wasn't one private individual. It was the community coming together and saying, "Hey, let's do this." And from all accounts, it was tailored after the Yale Bowl. But even when it was built, and I think Amy can probably give more color here, it wasn't called the Rose Bowl. It was actually given the name Rose Bowl by a writer, I believe, from the Pasadena Star News. In the initial game, they had a big sign above it, and they called it Stadium. So our forefathers were very visionary when it came to building the stadium, not so much in naming it, by naming it just stadium, but at that point it was the stadium, so everybody knew where to go.
I know this is going to wander off topic just a bit, and I want to return to the Rose Parade and the Rose Bowl in just a second. But just a passing curiosity on the grounds that make up the Rose Bowl area. Of course, there's the aquatic center off to the side, and behind that are some old they're river rock stone construction. What were those buildings, or were they buildings? Was it just a wall? What was that there once upon a time? It's no longer there.
Yeah, so the Arroyo stone is really a key component to all of the architecture down in the Arroyo here. So not just the stadium, but all the rock walls that make up the Arroyo. And there's actually a really cool little mini amphitheater theater actually behind the aquatic center. That's a beautiful little spot to go walk and hang out there. And there's sort of small buildings that are strewn throughout. I'm not sure the exact one you're asking about. I do know that this area at the time was really almost untouched. It was similar to why JPL is where JPL is because it ended up being the place where Caltech students went to go shoot off rockets and do things that they couldn't do on campus at Caltech. And so they were sent up to the wilderness, which was the Arroyo Seco and where JPL is now. So when the stadium was built, it's actually very interesting. When it was built, and even when we do renovations now, we did a large, close to $200 million renovation about a decade ago. And as they dig down, they find things like washer and dryers and hubs of cars, and people would come down to the Arroyo and leave things that they didn't want down here. And so it's very interesting now that it's really this meeting ground for everyone, in not just Pasadena but the San Gabriel Valley. It's almost Central Park for Los Angeles. But at the time, it was the outskirts. It was built outside of almost town in a place that nobody really lives and people can get to. And now we've really built up around it. And now our setting is really what sets us apart. Our beautiful setting and the neighborhood here really is, in my opinion, what makes the stadium so special.
And the stadium has been recently renovated again. Is that not true? It's been modernized quite a bit in the last couple of years.
It has, yeah. We continue to renovate the stadium with our partners at the Tournament of Roses and with UCLA, who both signed long-term agreements with the stadium so that we could go out and fund improvements to the stadium. So we did a large renovation that was close to $190 million, as I said, just over 10 years ago. But we continue to invest in the stadium. We've, since that time, put close to $40–50 million into the stadium. Even next year, we have about $9 million in capital planned for it. The easiest way to explain it is it's a 100-year-old home. And we know that everyone in California, and especially in Pasadena, loves our historic buildings and loves that we continue to utilize them and we don't tear them down and build something new. But in order to do that, if you had a 100-year-old home, you'd have to invest in it, not just in the things that everybody sees, but in the infrastructure and everything that makes them sound. And so that's really a part of the experience I'm most proud of, is not just that we still host events and that the Rose Bowl game is as vibrant as it's ever been, but that we also continue to invest in this building so that it never turns into the Coliseum in Rome when you take a tour and they say, hey, and by the way, there used to be events here. That would be a travesty. And so we're very proud that there are still events here and that this place is still as vibrant as ever.
And it is quite amazing that we have so many cultural landmarks right here in the Pasadena area. Moving into the present and even into the future, if you go to some of the websites that are set up for the Rose Parade and the Rose Bowl, there's actually one of those sites has a countdown clock, and I believe it currently states that there's about 67 days until the New Year and the Rose Parade and the Rose Bowl. So let's talk about the 2023 Rose Parade. For starters, I'd like to find out about this year's theme and how you chose it.
So here's the countdown clock. It's 67 days. I don't know if you can see that, but I have that on my phone. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It tells me every morning how many days are left. So thank you for
No
asking
question about
about thank you for asking about the theme. So this year's theme is turning the corner. It is a theme that my husband and I developed. It sort of has different meanings for different people. Turning the corner is sort of a for our volunteers and our flow participants, it instantly transports them to the corner of Orange Grove and Colorado Boulevards. I mean, that is where we do everything. That's where we're headed every year as we're moving towards the parade and the game. And then for other people, it means a lot of different things. New Year's Day is it's a time for renewal. It is a time for resolutions. It's a time to just pursue any kind of possibility that you can possibly have in or want to do in your life. And so that is sort of what turning the corner meant for us, especially after the last couple of years. We felt like it was something that was really joyful and hopeful for people.
Of course, every year we have a grand marshal. And who have we selected this year's grand marshal?
We're so excited. So this year's Grand Marshal, and I think is a perfect choice for this theme. Gabby Giffords is our Grand Marshal. We announced her last week. I think it's been a busy couple of weeks, or 2 weeks ago. Anyway, we were thrilled when we asked if Gabby would want to be our Grand Marshal, and she said yes. And I can't tell you the great reactions and feedback that we've had from everybody, and she is super excited to be a part of our family now.
I do know, since I happened to catch last evening's news, that you have also just selected the Rose Queen for this year's event.
We did. We did. Our royal court was selected on October 3rd. And then last night was our official queen announcement and the coronation. And Bella Ballard is our rose queen for 2023. She, along with our incredible royal court, will be out in the community. They do a lot of service projects. They meet and greet a lot of different people. They are truly great ambassadors for the Tournament of Roses and the city of Pasadena. And we couldn't be more excited. Bella has a great tie. Really, when you talk about the Rose Bowl being, sort of based off of Yale, Bella will be going to Yale for college next year. So she is a soccer player, and actually, she is a soccer coach. She's semi-pro. She's just an amazing young woman, as are all of the young ladies that are on our royal court.
Well, that is fantastic. Jens, I want to turn to you for a moment because just a few moments ago, as a matter of fact, you mentioned that this year or upcoming in this year will be the 100th anniversary of the Rose Bowl. So that leads to a question. Is there going to be a big celebration planned? I mean, 100 years, that's a long time.
Yeah, no, we decided that the best way to celebrate our centennial is through events, because as we know, the Rose Bowl Stadium is special because of the events that take place here, from the Rose Bowl game to UCLA football to concerts to flea markets. So we really kicked off our centennial celebration with last year's Rose Bowl game, and the tournament and Amy and her team were unbelievable partners. During the game, we had 100 seconds of fireworks that lit off from the top of the stadium. ESPN did a lot of features on the different things that have happened here over the past 100 years. And then over the course of this year, we've been really, really engaged with celebrating through events. This is actually one of our busiest event seasons we've ever had. And we thought that was important to show that it's not just about the past 100 years of events that have taken place in the history, which we've really focused on and told those stories, but more so, look how busy we are now. We're 100 years young, and all the different events that have gone through this year, from the Rose Bowl game to UCLA football. We've had international soccer and concerts. And for us, and music festivals, we're now a very, very busy music festival site that uses the entirety of our grounds, not just the stadium itself. And for us, that's been the most fun, is to be able to celebrate our centennial with people at events, because that's really what makes our centennial special to so many people, is them talking about the Rose Bowl game they went to with their grandfather, or the UCLA game, or the flea market they never miss. And our job is really to show that those moments aren't going to stop, that we're going to continue to do that for another 100 years. So we're really excited. UCLA has been a great partner in highlighting our centennial. Both them and the Tournament of Roses put our 100th anniversary logo on the field. And we're really pushing forward, and are excited that we just announced, to sort of close out our centennial, that we're going to host the LA Galaxy and LAFC in a soccer match here in late February, which we think will be a really good close to our year. Everything's a little bit longer, so our 13-month centennial celebration.
So it is, in fact, a year-long celebration, actually, as you point out, slightly over a year long.
Correct. Yeah, and then we had a great event, the Party of the Century. So we had an event on August 13th where we had a party down in the field that was a fundraiser for our gala fundraiser for our foundation, the Legacy Foundation, and they raised over $1 million for improvements to the stadium. And it was a great event with a flyover and a live band and an auction. And really, it was a chance to talk about, as I mentioned, the last 100 years, but I was blown away at the passion and excitement about the next 100. And I think that that's probably what the people that built the stadium 100 years ago, the residents of Pasadena and the Tournament of Roses and Myron Hunt, I think they'd be most excited about the passion people have for the stadium going forward. Um, and I think that's as strong as ever.
Well, this might be a bit of an off the wall question, but one that really just popped into my head. So many of the newer sports arenas that are being built have covers on them. Has there ever been consideration of placing a cover over the Rose Bowl, one that could be removed or one that would be permanent?
No, we've never talked about a cover. We've also never talked about artificial turf. Those are things that we don't talk about here in Pasadena. And I think it goes back to Amy's point that she made earlier, is that really the whole point of the Rose Bowl when it was built was to celebrate the California lifestyle and the fact that it's 75 degrees here on January 1st. And I always, to me, that's my favorite day here, when I get to see all the people that Amy and her team invite here for that game. And you'll see people from Wisconsin, and it's the same weather. It's still 75 degrees, but people from Wisconsin are in shorts and a golf shirt. And then Oregon's here, and they're playing Oregon, and Oregon has Patagonias on, and they got long pants on and gloves. It's the same weather, but in the Midwest, it's like it might as well be Mexico. And for us, that's really what's important, is our views of the San Gabriel Valley and the sunset in the third quarter of Amy's game, and those are things you just don't mess with. And so for us, as we've looked at our improvements to our stadium, we've talked about things that make sure that we maintain our status as a National Historic Landmark, and that emphasize our setting and our place, because that's something you don't see all the time. A lot of MLB stadiums are in a place. Fenway is in a place. Wrigley's in a place. Oracle Park is on the bay and by the water. A lot of times in football, it's the gridiron, it's the game on the field, and it's less where is the stadium located. And we are so much more than that. The view from the Rose Bowl during the third quarter is something that people talk about outside of the game itself. People that love photography and beautiful views, that is their quintessential moment on New Year's Day. And we would do nothing to change that, because it's really what makes us special.
Jens, if you look at it, it's really kind of part of our theme poster too. We have those beautiful San Gabriel's, the sunset on those mountains is part of our theme. And just so you know, my family is all coming out from Wisconsin, and they're really excited to be coming out to California in December. So
I'll look for them in shorts and t-shirts.
exactly.
Amy, now back to you and the parade. It seems that every year the introduction to the parade gets a little bit bigger, a little bit fancier, and maybe you don't want to give anything away too quickly, but I'm wondering if you are at liberty to discuss what the plans are to open the 2023 Tournament of Roses.
Well, we are going to have an opening show. I'm not going to share what that is right now. We're excited because our presenting sponsor, Honda, it is the Rose Parade presented by Honda, and they are they're the opening float that we're going to be working on an incredibly beautiful opening show. But I can't share what it's about right now. But it will be big, and it'll be fun, and it'll be exciting and colorful.
Would you say it's must see? You'll be sorry if you miss out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody should tune in to see what we're going to be starting our parade out at 8:01:30.
All right. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's certainly a lot of work that goes into planning these two major events. As a matter of fact, it's basically a year-long process to get everything ready. You all make it look so flawless and effortless when the time comes, but you're really working behind the scenes almost immediately at the close of the parade and of the game. So I was hoping that each of you in turn would take a moment to tell us a little bit about the complexity of staging these grand events. Um, Amy, if you don't mind, I would like to start with you on this one, since the parade actually precedes the game?
Sure. We start right away. And right after the parade is finished for 1 year, we have a couple of weeks of wrap up meetings. And then we're immediately, as soon as the incoming president announces their theme, then we start right away. We have our float builders are submitting renderings that will reflect the theme. We've already chosen the bands 18 months in advance so that they can start um, fundraising, because I don't know if you know this or not, but all of the bands have to make their way into Pasadena from wherever they are, and they have to raise the money for that. So they do not. So we let them know quite a bit ahead of time so that they can do that fundraising effort. But we have 31 committees, operating committees within the Tournament of Roses that our 935 members are assigned to, and they all start their planning for the next year. And in like with this parade, I just briefly talked a little bit about the opening show, but in addition to the opening show, we have a closing show that sort of ties in with the football game, and then we have several other shows planned in the middle of the parade. So those are all things that that our committees are all working on. They're securing sponsors. They're working with our broadcasters, who are incredibly important to us. And then we move to the game, and our incredible game staff here that works with Jen's staff. They're working year round as well to bring to America the best post college season football game.
Jens, I've got to ask the same question to you. What does your work day look like? And you do that for pretty much a year leading up to the big game.
Yeah, we're really lucky when it comes to the Rose Bowl game because, as Amy mentioned, they have an amazing team that's actually on staff at the tournament, led by Kevin Ash, who's the CAO for the game, who plans us out year round, and it is a year round effort for them because one of the biggest reasons why, and I've really learned this in my time here, is you have a lot of time to plan, but there's so many variables that come up really in the month of December. So Kevin and his team do a great job of going out around the country and working with all the different teams that have a chance of being in the game, because coming to the Rose Bowl game is a chance of a lifetime, not just for the players on the team, but the families and the bands and the cheerleaders. Amy and her team still are the only bowl that mandate that the bands get time on national TV at halftime. So this is a once in a lifetime experience for that entire fan base. So Kevin and his team work year round on working with all the different groups that could come here, because it's really a race. Early December, it's announced who's coming to the Rose Bowl game, and it seems like a lot of time for those of us that live around here. But if you're across the country, you might find out on December 6th that you're coming to Pasadena in a few short weeks. So that's flights, that's finding tickets and planning your trip. And the same things happen for the teams, and the teams need to come out and they need to plan all their activities. And the Tournament of Roses has a great staff that pulls together an amazing almost week for the teams. It includes things like going to Disneyland, the Lowry's Beef Bowl, and they're really it's like having two groups of 200 relatives coming to town and making sure they enjoy town and leave happy and fat. And they do an amazing job of it. And we're really lucky at the stadium to have great partners, because on the stadium side, our job is to work with them to make sure that this building is ready to receive all those people and that the experience matches their expectation. If a grown man is getting a Rose Bowl ticket in his stocking and he's going to start crying and jumping up and down on social media, we need to make sure that said grown man has a great time when he comes here, whether it's parking or food and beverage or the experience inside. So we're lucky to have great partners at the Tournament of Roses to help make that happen.
Well, there's also the hidden side of staging these really, really large events that attract people from all over the country, and in fact, very much the case also from all over the world. And the number one priority, of course, is security. How do you make an event or events of this size and caliber safe for so many people?
We're very lucky because we have an incredible relationship with the city of Pasadena, and throughout the fall, we meet almost on a biweekly basis with our partners at the city of Pasadena, Pasadena PD, along with the other agencies that will be in town for these events. So we I can't even express how grateful we are to the Pasadena Police Department and the fire department and Public Works and everybody else that comes together to make sure that we're as safe as we can be on on parade day and at the bowl. And I know that Jens will be able to talk about it a little bit, but we also, the PD and everybody else is also at the stadium um, on game day to make sure that people are as safe as they can be. So we have security checks as we're going into the bowl. We have security checks on TV corner. So and we're doing everything that we can to make sure that everybody has a wonderful experience and that they feel safe in Pasadena.
We're very lucky to have great agencies to work with. Some cities try, try and have their police and fire play a secondary role. In Pasadena, they're really they lead the sword because they're so talented and they do this all the time. So we really lean on those partners. We lean on the Tournament of Roses, who has their experience with their network of other bowls. And then we have a great team here. We don't just do the Rose Bowl game. We do multiple UCLA games and concerts and events. So we really fine tune our skills here, and we have a great team that does that. But I think it also comes down to the fans. We have the fans that are here really lean into the security measures. We as an example, we changed our technology that we used at last year's game to a for our magnetometers at the gates that are metal detectors. And it's a new technology that doesn't require you to take everything out of your pockets to go through them. So it helps speed people through the lines, and it's just as safe, if not safer, because it's able to identify if there's anything that you need to stop somebody for. I was down at the gates with Kevin with the tournament, and we were watching, and a handful of people stopped and they said, hold on, I had stuff in my pockets," and then you had to walk them through like, "This is safe, this is okay." But it's really neat in that the people that are coming here, they really embrace these measures. When we first started them, maybe people sort of thought they were a pain, and now what do I have to do? I have to go through a metal detector. And I really think that even the country, but especially Southern California, has really embraced the idea of making sure that things are safe, because I'm bringing my son or my grandson or my daughter, and I want to make sure that when I'm in, that I feel that I'm in with a bunch of people that are here just to have a great time, just like me. And so I think that the fans and the spectators that come get a lot of credit too, because they're really committed to see something, say something, and going through the process and making sure that they're part of the solution.
We have the clear bag checks. We're doing everything that we possibly can. Jens is right. I mean, we take this seriously. We bring, hundreds of thousands of people, over 700,000 people live on the parade route. And then, the bowl is close to 90,000 spectators. And we want to make sure that they do have the best possible experience that they can have. And so we really take it seriously.
Well, and in keeping with the idea of being safe, and you mentioning 700,000 people on the parade route and 90,000 in the Rose Bowl for the game, obviously things have changed in the last few years thanks to, of all things, COVID. In fact, COVID was the reason that we actually did not have a Rose Parade, one of the very, very rare occasions where the parade was actually postponed. And the pandemic isn't what it was a couple of years ago, but of course, there have been messages in the media talking about the potential for a massive surge come the holiday season. Certainly, there's a concern that flu is going to be a bigger issue this year. What kind of steps are being taken to mitigate those concerns, or are there any steps? Is there really anything that can be done about that?
Well, last year we were in COVID protocols with the city, and as you know, the city has its own health department, and so We have on our side, we have a team that we have assembled that meets on a regular basis with the city's health director. So we're really thankful that we're having the parade in the game this year, and we are continuing to work with the city all the through this whole thing and monitoring this. And so as we get closer to the end of the year, we'll know more about what COVID is doing, and we're prepared to make whatever arrangements we need to make. If it means proof of vaccination or negative COVID test or whatever. I mean, we did that last year at the game. We were able to have for 88,000 fans proof of vaccination or negative COVID tests and get the fans into the bowl before the game started. So I mean, our teams, Kevin Ash and his team with the game, and then our team here with parade. You know, we all work together to make sure that we're ready for this. So, you know, fingers crossed. It's that it's not going to be what media is saying it's going to be. You know, I'm hopeful that we're turning the corner on this,
I like the
and
way you
that we
tied that
can
in.
just
That
have
was smooth.
I have to do that occasionally, so it's required. But no, so we're really hopeful that this year is going to be a fun year, that we're going to actually be able to see people's smiles, and that's what we're shooting for this year.
Anything, Jens, that you might add to that?
What I would say is that we are very lucky to have our own health department in Pasadena because we're able to right size things. You know, the LA County Health did a great job, but they might not have the bandwidth to focus on one event or a series of events, and our Pasadena Health Department is able to do that, so we can right size it. So what I can say is that what we're really focused on now, and obviously things can change as Amy mentioned, but right now we're making sure that everybody can feel comfortable in their own way. And so when people come to events, we still have hand sanitizer stations. We encourage masking if people want to do that. If somebody goes to in a situation where they feel it's too cramped or too crowded, we do relocations. So as of now, as we have all sort of learned in life, different people are at different points of turning the corner, as Amy would say. And so we want to make sure that we're giving them options based on where they are, because really, to Amy's point, this is America's New Year's Day celebration, and when people come, we love to see their smiling face and say Happy New Year. But for them, we can still smile from a mask and say Happy New Year if that's what makes them more comfortable. So I really think that Pasadena Health deserves a lot of credit of working with us to try and make sure that this is an appropriate measure that still makes sure everybody has a good time.
Well, as we noted earlier, it's a year-long process to get the events ready to go on New Year's Day or the day after, on the rare occasions that it falls on a Sunday. And Amy, as you mentioned, this year will be such an occasion. So we won't actually see the Tournament of Roses or the Rose Bowl on the first, but rather on the second. But I'm wondering, and Amy, you mentioned that you volunteer to take on this responsibility of being in charge of this. And I don't know what possesses a person to take on that kind of responsibility, but thank you for doing that for us. But are there any, I'm sure there must be, what are some of the firsts that have taken place for each of you during your 10 years heading these operations? Jens, can we start off with you this time?
Yeah, you bet. So for me, my first Rose Bowl game was working, and so that it was a pretty amazing experience for me, and something I'll never forget. What I look a lot at the next 100 years of our stadium. It's hard not to look forward when you're having a 100th birthday. I hope I have my own 100th birthday at some point, but if not, I'll live vicariously through the stadium. And for me, I look at some of the firsts that we've had even over the past decade that I've been here. And one of the ones I'm most proud of is our music festivals. We have close to 300 acres of five-star parkland down here in the central Arroyo that we control, that include Brookside Golf Course. I'm a golfer, so I love golf. So if any golfers are watching, I'm not talking about getting rid of the golf course. I'm really proud of how our team has been visionary in using the campus. And I think that really is the future for us, is thinking about what sets us apart. LA is one of the most competitive stadium markets in the world, with SoFi Stadium and Dodger Stadium and Banc of California and the Coliseum. And so if we just look at ourselves as a stadium, we're one of many. I think we're the best of many, but we're still one of many. If you look at our stadium and our setting, we're one of one in the world. And so we've really looked at the future of the stadium as how do we embrace that. And the Tournament of Roses, like always, got that before most people. When you come to the Rose Bowl game, it's not just about coming to the game. It's coming down here and parking, and then walking up and watching the parade. And then you come back down after the parade and you go to a beautiful tailgate underneath an oak tree in the shade of a fairway of a golf course, and maybe go to a tailgate. Then you come into the game and you have a great time. By the time you're done, you realize you spent 12 hours down in the Arroyo Seco on Colorado Boulevard, and you're as happy as you've ever been. And so for me, the things I'm most proud of are initiatives that are taking advantage of our setting because I think that is what's going to keep us special for the next 100 years.
And Amy, of course, we have to find out about the firsts that you've experienced since you became president.
Well, it's interesting, and I don't know if you know this process, but you are elected 8 years in advance. So 8 years in advance that you will be president. But during my 30 years, my first parade, I'm Angela Lansbury was the Grand Marshal for the 1993 parade. And we recently lost her. So it started to get me thinking about, what what that year was like for me. Uh, I was working for a general contractor and a construction management company that was kind of involved with the press box project. And that's sort of how I got involved with the tournament. But I think one of the greatest firsts for me personally was when Libby Evans Wright was the first woman president of the Tournament of Roses. And I'm the fourth. There are three women that have done this in front of me that inspired me to keep going with this, through, I have children and I had a career and I have everything else. And it's a lot to, as you said, why would somebody do this? Why would they volunteer all of these hours? And, this is on top of actually, having another job, people are putting in 40 hours a week on tournament business. And just to see that Libby and Sally and Laura, that they're such accomplished women and they're so inspiring to me. And so for me, I'm hoping that I can inspire more women to volunteer for this organization, to become leaders within this organization, because that's really one of the things that we're about, is creating leaders. And so that's like my favorite first was seeing Libby on the parade route and down on the field when the Grand Marshal tossed the coin.
Well, I know that so much of the staff that is tasked with making the Rose Parade a reality are volunteer. I'm not so familiar with how it goes at the bowl, but I'm wondering how both of your organizations outreach to the community to get them involved in the preparations for these big events.
Well, I guess I can start. So every year, reaching out to the community, we reach out. We're constantly recruiting for new members, for new volunteers for the Tournament of Roses. We have a mandatory retirement age, or somebody decides that maybe volunteering for this organization is not what they want to do at the moment. So we are recruiting every year for members, and our recruitment model is you live or work within 25 miles of the Pasadena City Hall, and then you can apply to become a member. We have a lot of community relations programs out there right now that we are doing. We have our foundation, our Tournament of Roses Foundation. So we have a lot of outreach within the community, a lot of giving back to the community, because we feel that the general area, Pasadena, the San Gabriel Valley, the greater Pasadena area, they give so much to us that we want to make sure that we're giving back to them. So I'm not, I am really grateful and honored that, I get to see this happening every year. And we have in addition to our 935 volunteers, we have an amazing staff that is year round here. It's a small staff. It's only about 30, I think 35 or so. But they're really the consistency, the backbone of what we're doing every year.
Well, for those who might be interested in volunteering to help with the Rose Parade, in what capacity can volunteers function?
Well, they would be a member of one of the 31 committees that we have. So they might be the folks riding the scooters on the parade route, escorting the float down the street, or they could have something to do with our music committee or our equestrian committee or something like that. So we when they join the Tournament of Roses, they normally are on one of our what we call Big Three, which is our Float Fest festival or post parade area, or our formation area, or parade operations, and then they would rotate. So we have a 2-year rotation every year. And so they could start that way. There's always an opportunity if you could decorate floats. You could contact one of our commercial float builders or our self-built municipal floats and offers up some time to help them decorate floats towards the end of the year. So there are many opportunities for people to involve themselves with the Rose Parade. Maybe fulfill a dream, a bucket list item to throw a flower on a float or something like that.
Amy, is there a specific website that potential volunteers can go to gather more information?
Yes, thank you for asking that. It's tournamentofroses.com.
That should be easy to remember. I'm sure it was planned that way intentionally. Jen's same thing. Question for you: Are there opportunities for the community to volunteer and get involved in the bowl, especially with regards to the game?
Yeah, so the game actually would be through Amy and her team. So we're very proud that when our partners come in here and they rent and they utilize the stadium, it's really their building for that week, that month that they're here. And so there's also committees that are involved in the game and planning out the hospitality around the game or the operations. So it would be the same spot for those volunteer opportunities. Really, for the stadium, from a community standpoint, we believe strongly that using our building to enhance and host community events is the best way we can give back, because that's really what we are. Is we're a platform, we're a meeting area that people in the community can come down. We actually, in about 3 hours here, are going to be hosting the Turkey Tussle, which is John Muir versus Pasadena High is going to play a football game here that they play here every year for a very long time. And we do multiple events like that because we believe strongly that we know that this building belongs to the people of Pasadena, and it's important that we let them come and utilize it. I was talking to a council member, Tyrone Hampton, the other day, and we were talking about how, it's so important that youth and students in Pasadena Unified get a chance to come to the Rose Bowl, because it would be a travesty if you graduated from a Pasadena high school and then went out in life and somebody said, "Hey, Pasadena Rose Bowl," and in the back of your head you've never been there and you don't know what that's about. And so we're really committed to make sure that not just the youth, but anybody that lives in Pasadena has a reason to come down here and do something, whether that is the flea market or the turkey tussle or America Fest at 4th of July. We do a great Cinco de Mayo event that's free to the community, because this building belongs to the community, and our job is to allow them to utilize it and show it off. So that's it. For us, from a community perspective, we really like to be that place where people meet.
Well, another question about the parade: will we get an opportunity to view the floats up close post parade this year?
Absolutely, absolutely. Our Float Fest festival at the end of the parade will be on the second and the third. So right after the parade and then the following day. So people have an opportunity to go there. They can buy the tickets online and go up there and take a look at it. I don't know if you've ever done that, Joe, but it is pretty amazing to be up that close to those floats to really have the time to look at the minute details that our float builders and our sponsors, our float sponsors, put into those floats. When you see green peas and you see different kinds of fruit, and then of course the roses and the flowers, and you see how they've turned this structure, this steel structure, into something so beautiful and graceful. It really is. It's a phenomenal moment to go to post parade.
It is something. I mean, since you questioned that, it is something I've always wanted to do. Certainly, my wife and I would love to. The 9 and the 12-year-old, they don't stand still for such things so easily. So hopefully someday I'll get an opportunity to do that, but I've not done that one yet. Um, Speaking of which, are there going to be any parade members or entrants returning that were unable to join the parade because of COVID issues in previous years?
Um, the bands, we have several of the international bands that were actually selected for the 2021 parade that did not happen. And then for last year for the 2022 parade, they still could not travel because of their own country's protocols or our protocols. So those bands are going to be participating this year. So those are some of the international bands that were invited 2 years ago, and so we're excited for them. We have Italy, and we have the Japan Green Band. We have Mexico, the Buos Mexican Band, Panama, Taiwan, there's one more, and I'll think of it. But oh no, there's five. I'm sorry. And so we're excited that they're going to be able to finally make it to Pasadena, and they're excited as well.
All right. Well, at the top of the show, we talked about a bit of the history behind both the Rose Parade and the Rose Bowl game. And in your introductions, each of you mentioned that you've been with your respective organizations for a little bit of time. As if I haven't put you both on the spot enough already yet, I want to do that one more time. I want to talk Rose Parade and Rose Bowl bloopers. There certainly have to be things that have happened behind the scenes that didn't go as planned, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a couple of anecdotal stories about things that didn't quite work out the way they were supposed to over the history of the parade, if any of you know any of them.
Amy,
Well,
ladies first. You get to go first. I'm going to sit back and say maybe, oh yeah, same one. Good point.
well, we're a live show, so there are always things that happen. Maybe the timing stretches a little bit in the parade, or we have a float that breaks down. A personal blooper for me, and I can't even believe I'm going to tell you this, but it was my first year on tournament, and I was on the post parade committee, and I was on the security team, and we apparently had a security emergency. I'm not even sure what it was or if it really was an emergency, but our team captain in our radios was saying, go, go, go. And I was on one of the scooters, and I thought I was hitting the brake, and I actually hit the gas, and I kind of dumped the scooter. And so even though I did that, look at me today. I'm actually the president of the Tournament of Roses. So, that is kind of a little blooper, but there are so many things that happen with a live show. There's just, we have floats that break down. We have horses that are stubborn, that decide that they're not going to go someplace, or they want to go someplace besides where they're supposed to be going. But I think for the most part, considering what a operational, logistical, huge item the parade is, or the game is, I think that we do really well. And I think that once it gets on broadcast TV, I think it all looks like it's going really smoothly.
All right.
Your turn, Jen.
Thank you for sharing that embarrassing moment. I'm assuming that did not happen on camera, by the way, that when you
No, thank goodness it didn't. So I think I even like maybe rubbed against my vice chair's van a little bit, but we're not going to talk about that anymore.
Okay.
Amy brings it up after she's president. She's very smart. You can't take it away from me now. I'm already president. She didn't talk about this last year.
And there's only 67 days to the parade now. They can't do anything now.
What are they going to do?
Jen, your turn.
I have a couple. I have one I wasn't here for because it was a long time ago, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Cal's wrong way, Roy Riggles, who he picked up a fumble in a game and got turned around and ran the wrong way for about 70 yards until one of his own teammates tackled him at the 1 yard line before he ran in the wrong end zone. And that was on camera. So it's Roy Riggles is his name, and he played for Cal. So you can look that one up on YouTube, and that one's a pretty good blooper. For me, I think one of the interesting stories we have is with Caltech. So Caltech has a great history of trying to prank the Rose Bowl game itself. Everything from card stunts where University of Washington was in the game, and they held up cards that were supposed to say Washington, and they said Caltech because the Caltech students were smart enough. This was before my time and Amy's time because our security is much better now. But they were able to hold up cards that said Caltech. And over the years, they've done a bunch of different really cool pranks, one of which was actually, I believe, for the 100th game, Amy, because it was the 100th game and then the national championship game thereafter, where they put a lighted sign up in the hills that said Pasadena. It almost looked like the Hollywood sign. And during the game, it lit up and said Pasadena, and ESPN and everybody was covering it. They thought it was really neat. Well, 5 days later, there was a national championship game, and ESPN was covering the sign and shooting it during the day like it was the Hollywood sign. And so in the middle of the national championship game, the Pasadena sign started to flicker, and then it said Caltech. So they played a nice little week-long prank on all of us down here. So I think Caltech gets the blooper from my perspective down here.
Interesting. I did not know that they were so mischievous at Caltech.
Yeah, they have. I think they have a prank fund. They have a prank club. It's very well thought out. But we're iron tight inside the stadium now.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's so they won't be getting away with that anymore. Speaking of the Rose Bowl game, I was curious, does anyone or have you ever had people draw parallels between it and of course the Super Bowl game? And have you ever felt pressured or the need to try and create a halftime show that is more competitive with what they do on in the Super Bowl?
You know, I don't think so. I mean, we love our universities and their marching bands so much, and it's such a treat for people to actually see those marching bands that I can't imagine that and we have different spots during the game that we're celebrating people within the community, maybe teachers or somebody else that we're trying to celebrate. But for us, the tradition of hosting the bands and having them perform is second to none. I mean, I think it makes us stand apart from the Super Bowls. And when you think about it, having the Rose Bowl game here in Pasadena every year, it's almost like bringing a Super Bowl to the city every year. When you think about the number of people and the revenue generated and the excitement that we bring to the city of Pasadena every year, it's almost like having a Super Bowl here every year.
And will there be a band fest this year also?
Yes, yes. So we have the band fest, and so I'm excited. We have 20 bands that will be performing some pretty incredible what they would do on their halftime shows or their field shows. They're really exciting. So I hope that, and we live stream that if people can't be there in person. So hopefully everybody will be able to enjoy these bands that are coming from all over the place.
And when does Band Fest take place this year?
Banfest is on the 29th and the 30th, I believe. So there's an afternoon show on the 29th, and then the 30th there's a morning and then an afternoon show.
Thank you both so much for joining me this evening. It's been truly a pleasure speaking with both of you and very informative. I especially enjoyed the history of both the game and the parade. Thank you again both for joining us tonight.
For having me.
Thank you so much.
For our viewers at home, if there are topics you would like to see addressed on this program, you can email them to arroyolive@pasadenamedia.org, and we may include them in a future broadcast. Until next time, this has been Arroyo Live. I'm Joe Carbonetta. Thank you for watching, and good night.